July 2019, Hawaiian kūpuna, or elders, put themselves on the front line in defense of Mauna Kea. These images have been shown all over the world, and they've affected people differently. Now, obviously, I can only speak on how they've affected me, and I'd actually like to share those feelings, particularly with the Palauan community, because my feelings about what I saw are very much shaped by the history of our beloved republic and how it played a major role in my formative years. There are 3 separate compacts of free association with the United States of America. One with Palau, one with the Federated States of Micronesia, and one with the Marshall Islands. Collectively, our islands are often referred to as the Kofa Nations, and sometimes we're just referred to as Micronesians. After World War II, we were handed over to the United States of America, having previously been under Japanese rule by the newly formed United Nations, and we were called the Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands. So in 1979, about 92% of Palauan people voted for a nuclear-free constitution, which included a clause that required 75% of voters to agree before nuclear weapons could be brought into Palau. This was the first time a clause banning or restricting nuclear activities had ever been included in a nation's constitution anywhere in the world. And unfortunately for Palau, the United States had already set its sights on about 1/3 of our land and our deepwater harbor for military purposes, which included using it for the storage of nuclear weapons. From 1979 to 1994, Palauans were forced to vote 11 times to uphold our unique and protective clause. And this wasn't because anyone particularly enjoyed having to vote for the same issue on a consistent basis, but more because the United States felt we weren't voting the right way. Now, in the fall of 1987, Mirar Gabriela Ngirmang headed a group of literally dozens of ma'as, or women elders, that took Palau's government to court for trying to force a vote on the Constitution that would overturn the 75% vote and replace it with a simple majority. And how did the Palauan government respond? They responded with intimidation and coercion. Utilities and water were shut off, government workers lost their jobs, and the ma'as and their families, they were terrorized. The ma'as involved in the lawsuit were subjected to death threats, a lot of times from drunk men who had lost their jobs. Law enforcement would show up at the ma'as' homes to force them to withdraw from the lawsuit. Shots were fired at their homes, and Mirar Gabriela Ngirmang, her home was firebombed. Assassins targeting Miracabo Roman Bedor, who at the time was an attorney working in defense of the Constitution, mistakenly murdered his father. And because of the violence and the constant threats, the case was withdrawn, and the presiding judge invited the ma'as to resubmit the same case once it was safe for them to do so. In 1988, the Mirar and a group of Palauans traveled to the United States Congress and the United Nations to inform them that the case would be resubmitted, but that due to the dangers they were facing, they would need more time. My dad was one of the speakers at the United Nations alongside Mirar and the other Palauans in what was ultimately a fight for self-determination. Now, some of my most prominent memories from ages 4 through 11 revolve around what it meant to be Palauan and the ideas of self-determination and decolonization as they were explained to me as small siya, and the idea of caring so deeply for your home and your people that you would lay your life on the line for them. Now, as a kindergartner, trying to wrap my mind around the idea that someone's own grandma could love Palau so much that she would risk her life for it, that's a lot to process. At that age, I understood the basic notion that soldiers went to war because they loved their countries and they wanted to protect their people. But now I had a different image in my mind about what it meant to love your land and your people. And these are all the thoughts that came rushing back when I saw these images of elders being arrested on Mauna Kea. And I thought about my 5th birthday and how the Mirair was there and how I didn't realize until adulthood how much of what she and everyone who fought against the compact impacted how I view the world and how I view myself in the grander scheme of things. I thought about how I was the only kid in the room who understood Palauan, so while my cousins were outside playing during my birthday party, I sat inside eavesdropping on the grown-ups. I thought about hearing them tell stories about people being threatened and people being assaulted and people being killed. And I thought about everything I'd experienced up until that moment as a Micronesian living in Hawaii. And I knew that the only actions I could take would be ones in support of the protectors. I've read a few comments from folks from various Micronesian islands who've been less than enthusiastic about supporting the protectors, citing the mistreatment of the greater Micronesian community in Hawaii. And to be fair, everyone is entitled to feel and believe whatever it is they feel and believe. However, I believe that it's all the more reason to show support. Yes, the greater Micronesian community hasn't had the best experience across the board here. And yes, there have been Hawaiians who've said some pretty shitty things about us. I know, I have the screenshots. But you know that phrase, hurt people hurt people? So I choose to believe that the mistreatment of the greater Micronesian community for a lot of people stems from a place of pain. And pain can be a really transformative thing, and sometimes that's good and sometimes not so much. I also choose to believe that that pain is rooted in the same ideas, the same mentalities that Palauans like the Mirair and her collective of badass ma'as faced. That's a pain that's born from colonization and militarization, exploitation, and being stripped of your self-determination. And these aren't issues that just happened in Palau or just happened in Hawaii. These are issues faced throughout the Kofa nations, at Standing Rock, in Puerto Rico, in New Zealand, Guam and CNMI, in West Papua. It's the same ugliness faced by Indigenous communities pretty much all over the world. And for me, and again, I can only ever speak about how this feels for me, it seems like the only way I can show my love for my own culture and our history, and the only way I can honor the Mirair and the Ma'as and everyone who fought alongside them and all my ancestors, is to show compassion and support to our fellow Indigenous communities who are really fighting their own difficult battles against our same enemy.